All right, section 5.1, basically unit 5 is a continuation of polynomials. We're just getting a little more in depth. The first section is on finding rational roots. We're going to use something called the rational root theorem to find all of the solutions of a polynomial. So here you go. You can see the rational root theorem. It's a lot of writing, but basically you take the factors of your constant term and divide it by the factors of your leading coefficient. That gives you every possible real answer to your polynomial function, or any possible zero. So here we go. Let's take a look. So all it says to do is list the possible rational zeros. We don't have to find any of them. We just have to list the ones that are possible. So start with your constant. List all the factors of 9. So you get plus or minus 1. These are the numbers that all you can divide 9 by the way. Plus or minus 3, plus or minus 9. That's it. Divide those by your factors of your leading coefficient. Well, my leading coefficient is 1, so the factors of 1 are just plus or minus 1. So if you clean this up, all the possible zeros are, if you divide 1 by 1, you get plus or minus 1. If you divide 3 by 1, you get plus or minus 3. And if you divide 9 by 1, you get plus or minus 9. Those are all the possible answers for this specific polynomial function. Those are just possible ones. We'll talk about actually finding them here in the next example. So it says find all the zeros. So first, we want to list the possible zeros. And then it says use a graphing calculator. So we are going to get really good at using those things here in just a little bit. If you don't know how to graph, I'll walk you through that in just a second. So the possibles. So start with your constant term. List the factors. So we have plus or minus 1. Plus or minus 2. So 1, 2, 3, and 6. You can divide 6 by all those numbers. And then again, divide that by the leading coefficient factors. So possible factors of 1 or just plus or minus 1. And again, if you divide them all, if you clean this up, 1 divided by 1 is 1, 2 divided by 1 is 2, 3 divided by 1 is 3, and 6 divided by 1 is 6. And it's always going to be plus or minus. So these are the possible zeros. Okay? That doesn't mean they're all answers because we talked about this before and we will in the next section. But your degree tells you how many answers you will have. There are 3 answers we listed. We got 2, 4, 6, 8 possible. So obviously they can't all be an answer. So here's how you're going to use your graphing calculator. So open up the graphing calculator app. Let me go back. Should take you to your home screen. If there's anything on there, of course, you can clear it off. You don't really need anything there. But what we're going to do is go up in the top left corner here where it says y equals, and we're going to hit that button. Now, if you have anything typed in, just go ahead and hit clear. We don't want anything on either of those 10 options there. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go back. I should have this in front of me. We are going to type in this equation. Now, we just need this part and over. We already have the y equals is the same thing as f of x equals. So we're going to start with x to the third. So let's go back. So right here, right above matrix is the x button. Now, if you want to do any exponent, you know there's an x squared button here, but obviously we want to get into higher exponents, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever. So anytime you want to do a different exponent other than 2, way on the right side above the division symbol is a little up caret looking thing. We're going to hit that, and you'll notice it puts a little black box there, and it kind of takes you up there for the exponent. So we're going to type in 3. So now I have x to the third, you can see on my screen. Now this part's important. You have to hit the right arrow to come down from the exponent. Otherwise, everything else you type is going to be up there as an exponent. And then I believe it was minus 7, and then x. And I'm going to hit that little caret thing again to the second. Same thing. Hit the right arrow to come down. Plus, let's just check here quick. So we got that. So we're going to go plus 10x plus 6. So plus 10x plus 6. So we have it typed in there. And then way on the top right, there's a button that says graph. So go ahead and hit graph, and you'll see what your graph kind of looks like. Obviously, you can play around with this if you want. Zoom in, out, whatever. Mess around with it. But if you remember back from Algebra 1, we talked about solutions to your graph are wherever your graph crosses the x-axis. Those are all solutions. Now, it'd be great if I could just touch here on my screen and figure out the exact number. I don't know if you can see, but right above where it says y equals, there's a little tiny thing that says x equals 4.4. And then right above draw, there's a little tiny thing that says y equals negative 0.366. So, like I said, it'd be nice if I could just touch it and get it, but obviously that doesn't work. So here's what we're going to do. If you hit the second button, and then right above the top, or right in the top row, there's a button that says trace, and in tiny little letters in the top left corner it says calc. We want to calculate, so go ahead and hit that button. And what we're trying to calculate is the zero, which is another name for solution. Actually, the problem says find all the zeros, so that should tell you right there. So find the zeros, hit enter. Now, again, it's really tiny, but above y equals, it says left bound question mark. So we have three answers. We have one right here. Ooh, we have an answer here. We have an answer here, and we have an answer here. So you could pick any of them. I like to pick the ones that look obviously like nice numbers, like it could be 3, 4, 5, 6, or whatever. So I'm going to hit just to the left of that one. It says left bound. So now I'm going to hit enter. Now it says right bound, so I'm going to touch just to the right of that point. Hit enter. And now it says right in the top left corner again, right above y equals, it says your 0 is where x equals 3. So what that means then is, it says I use my graphing calculator. I know that x equals 3 is an answer. And look, we had positive 3 right here as a possible solution. Sweet. Now, of course, if you have a graphing calculator, you have a graph easily accessible, you could use that and try to find more zeros. There's nothing wrong with that. Or because most of the time there's only one nice one and then the rest are gross answers with radicals and sometimes imaginary numbers or whatever. What we should do is do synthetic division. So we're going to set up our polynomials. So we have 1, -7, 10, and 6. And we know 3 is an answer, so we're going to divide by 3 because we talked about it last unit. But what that means is I should end up with a 0 here. Anytime you divide by a solution, your last number should be 0. And vice versa. If you divide and you get 0, you know you have an answer. But I'll erase it. Let's see if I am correct. So drop this down. 3 times 1 is 3. Add them up. -4. -12. 10 plus -12 is -2, -6, and 0. So I was correct. Okay. So again, that just confirms that 3 was an answer. And if you didn't have the graph, by the way, you would have to, and this part stinks, you would have to start with you have to start with +1, do synthetic division. If you don't get 0, go to -1 and try again. You just trial and error, and it'll take a little bit of time. So take advantage of that graph if you have it. So again, this is synthetic division, not substitution. So what that means is I'm left with x squared minus 4x minus 2 equals 0. So made up of these numbers here is my coefficients. And we talked about it last unit, but to solve a quadratic, we have several different ways. You can factor, you can complete the square, you can use the square root method, or the tried and true way that always works no matter what, the quadratic formula. So I'm going to put it here for you. X equals -b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So then what you would do, and I'll run through this one kind of quickly here, because hopefully we can plug numbers into the quadratic formula. But x equals, so negative, there's b, negative 4 plus or minus the square root of negative 4 squared minus 4 times 1 times negative 2. There's A, B, and C all over 2 times A. And you can use a calculator to help you clean this up. That's fine. I have no issues with that. So on the outside here, negative 4 is just 4. On the inside, 4 squared is 16. 16, so then we have 4 times 16 plus 8 is 24 divided by 2. And just a little reminder for you here. So if you have a radical, you should try to break it up. So 24 is 6 times 4. That's 3 and 2. That's 2 and 2. And what you're looking for is a group of 2, which we got. So x equals 4 plus or minus. So for that group of 2, we're going to bring a 2 out. And then these two didn't have a partner, so we're going to take 3 times 2, which is 6, and put that back. And then, of course, it can't be that simple because why would it? But what we can do now is because 4 and 2 are both divisible by 2, we should probably do that just to clean it up one last time. So that means that x equals 4 divided by 2 is 2, plus or minus 2 divided by 2 is just 1, times the square root of 6. So like I said at the beginning, we should have gotten 3 answers. We found one with the help of our graph, and then we used the quadratic formula, well, synthetic division and the quadratic formula to help us find the others. So I'll do one more with you because they are kind of time consuming and the rest are basically the same. I'm going to leave the last 2 for you to try, but hopefully the graphing and stuff will go a little bit quicker the second go around here. So example number 3, f of x equals x to the third plus 2x squared minus 11x minus 12. Well, yeah. Actually, here's what I'm going to do. Because this was very similar, I'm going to do example number 4. Instead, I'm going to have you do number 3 and number 5. So, let's start by listing all of the possible roots. So, you start with your constant term, list all the factors of 5. So, we're going to start with plus or minus 1, plus or minus 5. Those are the only 2 numbers divisible, or that you can divide 5 by. Then, we're going to take the factors of our leading coefficient. And this is why this one's a little bit different. So we have, you can divide 2 by 1, and you can divide 2 by 2. So here's your list of possible solutions. Now, here's what's different. You have to simplify this if you can. So what we're going to do is we're going to start by taking 1 divided by 1. So there's 1. And then we're going to take 5 divided by 1. Okay, so there's 4 possible answers right there. Positive, negative 1, positive, negative 5. Now, let's try to get this out of there. We have to divide 1 by 2, which is just a half. And we have to divide 5 by 2, which is just 5 halves. So all this simplifying that I was doing here, it looked like I was doing nothing, but I was really dividing 1 by 1, 2 by 1, 3 by 1, and 6 by 1. I was dividing them by 1 to get my final simplified list. Here I did the same thing, 1 by 1, 5 by 1, those are easy. But then 1 divided by 2 is a half, 5 divided by 2 is 5 halves. All right, so there is all my possible roots. So again, if you're like, I hate graphing calculators, that's fine. Here's what you're going to have to do. We'll go 2, negative 5, negative 2, and 5. So we have 2, 4, 6, 8 possible answers. What you would have to do if you don't want to use a calculator is start with positive 1. You'd have to divide. If you get 0 here, you got lucky, you found an answer, you're done. Now you're on to this process from here on down. If you don't get lucky, then you got to go to negative 1. If that doesn't work, then you're on to positive 5. You're just basically guessing and checking. So I really encourage you to learn how to use this calculator. So we'll hop on over real quick. We will go to y equals. Again, we'll clear that because I'm done with that one. Now this time we have x to the third. Hit the right arrow to come down. Nope, wrong one. Wrong one. We have 2x to the third. Hit the right arrow to come down. Minus 5x squared. Right arrow again. Minus 2x plus 5. Hit graph. So there you can see, and you can look at these graphs. You can say, oh, 1 and -1 are answers. And that's fine by me. And 5.5 looks like an answer. Or 5 halves. 2.5. 5/2, sorry, goodness, is an answer as well. And that's fine. But just to confirm again that we can do this and get an actual answer with a little more confidence maybe. So we're going to hit second and then go over to trace because it says calculate in the top left corner. We are calculating a 0, so we'll go down to that option, hit enter. And you can pick any of these. I do not care which one you pick. Let's just pick +1. So it says left bound, so we want to be to the left of that point, anywhere, hit enter. Be to the right of that point, hit enter one more time, and then it tells you right above the y equals in the left corner there, that x equals 1. So you looked at it, you said that 1 was a solution. You also could have looked at it and said -1 was a solution, but that's fine, whatever. So we know that x equals 1 is a solution. So we're going to take this from a cubic, which we're going to have 3 answers, down to a quadratic by synthetic division. So I'll do this quickly here. And 0 was the result, which means that 1 is indeed an answer. Just confirmed it. So what's left now is 2x squared minus 3x minus 5 equals 0. So again, we just talked about it, but you have 4 options. Complete the square root method, or factoring are 3 very plausible options. Factoring is always going to be quick if you can do it, but the tried and true method would be the quadratic formula. It's always going to work. Now, of course, I say that, and this one is factorable, but use the quadratic formula to finish this one out here, or factor, whatever. But here are the 2 answers. I'll let you fill in the missing steps. We get 5 halves and -1. So make sure you go back and do example number 3, because it's not going to get any easier from here on out. So make sure you really kind of have this idea down. But example number 3, finish number 4 here, fill in the missing steps. You can factor it and use the quadratic formula. Both methods work just fine. And then example number 5.